It's a new year, 2025. Many of us are setting goals for how we want the year to unfold, and I would be lying if I said I didn't have my own. But I want to take a moment to invite our perfectionist minds to just stop, pump the brakes, and just be. In a social media world filled with beautiful sketchbooks and highly rendered art, I've been reflecting a lot on how there is so much pressure around forming an aesthetic, a personal brand, if you will, and how I think these social pressures have profoundly impacted the art making process. I grew up as an internet kid and I spent a lot of time on DeviantArt. Sharing my art online has always been a part of my creative process. As a weird kid, it's not so weird anymore it seems, but as a weird kid who liked anime, I didn't find too much camaraderie in that in person, so those online spaces became like a safe haven for me, and it felt good to connect and show my work. And when I talk about being a kid, I mean like 12 and 13 years old on the internet. At that age, when I was posting my art, it obviously wasn't like technically great, but it wasn't something that I really cared that much about. I really just enjoyed finishing a piece and just putting it out online. And a lot of my art at the time also consisted of fan art of animes that I was watching. So my art ultimately ended up being a part of a greater community. But as I got older, being technically good at things became a lot more important to me. And obviously part of it was my desire to just improve in general, but it was also about navigating online spaces and avoiding the critique that came with these visible flaws, like not being able to draw hands or different sized eyes, art that doesn't flip well, all of those like errors, so to speak. I like to think that I was creating art not for likes and views, but if we're gonna be really honest, like no one shares things online and hopes for silence. I think I've been online for so long that likes equate to acknowledgement for me, and because of that, that feedback has become a part of the process. Whether we want to admit it or not, anybody that's an artist sharing their work online obviously wants to connect with others and be acknowledged. And that can come in the form of likes and followers and shares and comments on your post. It's a really slippery slope. And for me, at least, I still kind of struggle with this, especially post-pandemic when it's been a lot harder to meet artists in person. Online spaces often feel like our communities, and art is a way of communicating. So when you share something online and it's met with radio silence, it can feel deeply personal even when it's not. And for me, that was how perfectionism slowly crept in. There are tons of factors to why I am a perfectionist, and perfectionism is something that I feel like every artist struggles with. We're often our own worst critics. The point being that I just didn't want to post bad art. I wanted to post something that was technically polished and thoughtfully crafted. And that's also the kind of work that gains the most traction online. That level of skill obviously deserves praise, but in this cycle of posting your art online, when you're only seeing the polished tip of the iceberg, I think it leaves a lot of room for shame when you create something that feels ugly. Again, I was an impressionable kid. I used to watch artists flip through these beautiful sketchbooks, and some even mention covering their ugly sketches with sticky notes, which I don't think is a bad technique by any means. It's something that I also did. But as I've gotten older, I kind of wonder, is that actually really that healthy for us? Because maybe it's not normal to feel the need to hide our ugly sketches in a space that's so sacred and very private and personal, like a sketchbook. I'm just feeling more and more lately like, shouldn't those imperfections have a place to exist too? Like, if nothing else, can you get a good laugh at an ugly sketch, or, you know, be able to reflect on it as an opportunity for growth? And I think this pressure to create good looking art only worsened as I transitioned from being a hobbyist to a career artist. So much of my adult life has been spent just worrying about feedback, whether from a professor, an art director, customers, worrying about whether a product will sell well and resonate. And in reflecting on that, I realized that the audience for my art is always external. The audience for my art has rarely been me. It transitioned from it being about just expression and community to the end result, which between running a small business and working in the animation industry, it's always a product for a consumer. And of course, that's every artist's dream, right? To work professionally as an artist and sell their own work. But when you're constantly thinking about selling it, whether literally or figuratively, your focus shifts to creating technically sound and well-crafted artwork, and you lose a little bit of your own voice. When you're so focused on the end result, the joy of the process can slip away. So this year, I really wanted to try to keep a sketchbook again, just to have a space for silly little doodles that don't have to go anywhere. They can just be for art's sake. And I would like to invite you to do the same thing this year. If you're an artist that shares online, I think it is just so integral to have a space that you explore your style independent of what you see online. I think a lot of people growing up in online spaces like myself get really set on following current trends and try really hard to avoid getting picked apart by strangers online. But making bad art or very okay art is actually a really good thing, because being bad is the first step to being really good at something. But I think it also invites your inner child to just play. Every artist started off as a kid with some pens and paper and lots of OCs and story ideas. And aside from myself going on this journey, I think it is, an opportunity to rethink your practice. Every time you sit down and make art doesn't have to be an opportunity to make something amazing or top the last thing that you did. You can simply just sit down and express yourself, and that's it. With the rise of AI, I think there's an incredible opportunity to embrace making imperfect art. AI generated art feels like the epitome of perfection, and that's already giving it too much because we've seen the hands. But it's polished, it's instant, and it's most of all detached. There's no real human expression in it. And those who rely solely on AI never really give themselves the chance to sit down and be imperfect. And that's a huge loss, because imperfection is where growth happens, and art is what makes us human. The ability to perceive and interpret the world in a way that reflects our emotions, our experiences, and our individuality is uniquely human. And that's something AI can never replicate. So I'm kind of getting back to the basics this year. Pens and paper, or rather, I'm like really digging colored pencils lately. Yeah, crafting with your hands is, I think, something that really immerses you in the heart of a creative process. I've been drawing on the computer since I was about 11 years old. I got my first Wacom tablet at that age, so I'm a long time digital artist. But I've spent the last 2 years really intentionally trying to shift away from digital art. It's fun and it's convenient. There are still things that I do prefer to do digitally, like painting, but I also realized that is another way to get caught up in perfectionism, because the undo button is always within reach. Working with my hands has really forced me to embrace my imperfections. I think working with my hands has been a great way to kind of break the habit of viewing flaws as imperfections and mistakes. And I'm human, you're human, hopefully, and our art should reflect our humanity, which is both full of flaws and qualities. I think that's it for this video. I really just had that on my heart and I wanted to express that, and I hope it helps you rethink the year. Try something new, be free. Don't worry about social media trends. TikTok is going away anyway. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to me on Patreon for more regular updates, and I will see you guys in another video.